Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to Sports Time HQ. I am your host, Fernando. Joining with me today is my great co-host, Gary. Gary, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. We've had a few weeks now of free agency, I believe. 2 weeks now of free agency. So a lot of stuff has gone down, and we're just going to continue to talk about it today.
Yeah, of course, free agency is a continuing cycle up until really the draft, but it's obviously died down a lot more than the first week. So it's not too much news and notes, but we do want to talk about the biggest free agency winners and losers, not only just as a team basis, but also in fantasy. And of course, let's get into first some news and notes from around the league. And one that I already was expecting, Giants, they are signing quarterback Jameis Winston to a 2-year deal, $8 million. Gary, what's your thoughts on that?
I like it. I mean, I'll definitely dive into it a little bit more on one of our prompts for this afternoon. But yeah, I mean, he played pretty solid with us, made a lot of mistakes, but that's just a Jameis Winston experience. I mean, he makes football fun to watch. So I think he's genuinely like the definition of a good bridge quarterback because he will give you some good moments, but he will also bring you back down to reality with his interception ability. So
Yeah, and I think it was always a running joke when he asked them, oh, like, hey, where should I go during the Super Bowl and everything. But I mean, Jameis Winston's going to be there. Will he be the only quarterback being taken in the New York Giants? I don't think so. I think they're going to take another player, whether it's Aaron Rodgers or whether it is Russell Wilson.
yeah, I probably agree with you on that. I think they'll still attack in the draft, if I'm being honest with you. I think that they are in love with the thought of drafting Shadur Sanders and having him develop under a guy like Jameis Winston, or maybe they still do bring in Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson, and it's kind of like a two-guy mentorship. But I mean, I think the Giants are doing it right. And if they draft a quarterback in the draft, then I'm also all for it.
All for it as well for me, too. 49ers, they signed quarterback Mac Jones. Not really much to talk about there. He's just going to be a backup. If Purdy were to go down, Mac Jones is the next guy there.
Sucks for Niners fans if that were to be the case.
It really does. But they've had a tough season this past slate, so can't complain with that either.
Sure.
Saints, they signed wide receiver Brandon Cooks to a 2-year deal. The Saints were the ones that drafted him in the first round back in 2014. He goes back to his home where he started. I think after this 2-year deal is probably when we'll see him retire.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool reunion. One that I wasn't expecting. I was just expecting him to go to I guess he did kind of go to a bum team, but now it does kind of make sense. It all comes full circle. I agree with you. I expect him to retire after this because, I mean, he's getting older. His production just isn't there anymore, and it just, I'm assuming, makes sense for him to start or to finish where he started.
Exactly. Commanders, they signed wide receiver Michael Gallup. He is coming out of a brief retirement. He was retired a year ago, now coming back. Commanders, they did trade for Deebo Samuel, so Michael Gallup for fantasy value isn't much there. He is the wide receiver 3 there. If, for instance, Deebo were to miss time or Terry McLaurin were to miss time, Michael Gallup could be a little relevancy, but I don't really see that too much.
Yeah, probably not, but I mean, the upside's always there. I know we're both fans of Michael Gallup's upside. We both thought that he was pretty good when he played in Dallas, and he showed so many flashes, and I wish it worked out for him, but it didn't. Maybe this is his second chance at it, and who knows? Hopefully he takes it and runs with it, because I still think that he can be productive in an offense like the Commanders.
Exactly. Chargers, they signed Tyler Conklin to a 1-year, $3 million deal. I kind of thought Conklin deserved a little bit more than $3 million a year, but nonetheless, he does fall to a team that needed some type of pass catcher improvement, he finds the Chargers. Justin Herbert gets another guy who can catch the ball, and hopefully the Chargers have a chance this season.
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, Tyler Conklin's always kind of been that guy that like goes out and just gives you like 30 receiving yards a night,
Mm.
more in my opinion than Tommy Tremble, who we talked about not too
Yep.
long ago, and is getting what, 8 million a year, right? 2 for 16, I believe was his contract. Again, doesn't make any sense to me at all. But he's earning almost 3 times what Tyler Conklin's getting. So kudos to him. He's got a great agent. But yeah, Tyler Conklin, I agree, deserves probably closer to $6 million a year.
And rookie tight end Colston Loveland did visit the Chargers, so this doesn't rule out that they could still draft a tight end early in the NFL draft this season.
Right.
Going into some visitings. Actually, no, excuse me. There is still one more signing, which I would have hoped would have been relevant, but unfortunately not too relevant for fantasy. The Vikings are signing wide receiver Rondale Moore. Rondale Moore, he's still so young, 24, 25, I think. So I still have faith in him, but unfortunately, falling with the Vikings, there's just no fantasy value there, unfortunately. But he did visit the Titans. I thought the Titans would have been a better landing spot for him for fantasy value, but unfortunately, he signs there to the Vikings, and that's just about it. I mean, there's not much to
Yeah,
talk about with him.
he's probably not going to be very fantasy relevant at all. But however, we do see a lot of random wide receiver threes turn up in the Vikings offense. So
Yeah.
if that were to happen, I honestly wouldn't be surprised because I still think he's relatively talented.
What was it, like KJ Osborne a few years
Right.
ago or something? Just
Yeah.
wide receiver 3 just blew up a couple times.
Right.
Vikings are not obviously pursuing quarterback Aaron Rodgers, but Aaron Rodgers is visiting the Steelers. So that's another sign that he is planning on not retiring and he's planning on playing. Now, whether or not he signs with them is still the bigger question. But I think in the end, I think he's going to sign with the Steelers.
Probably. And I don't want to see that, but I mean, I guess they have the offensive tools for him. If he wants to go to a place to win, I guess they have the assets. Always have the defensive assets. And of course, Tomlin's a great head coach. So it all makes sense to me. But at the same time, he's possibly hinted that he might retire. So we'll definitely be keeping an eye on that situation because I still think that with Aaron Rodgers as your quarterback, no matter who you are, no matter what you may think, your team is in contention for a Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think now that you have DK Metcalf, Jalen Warren is your star running back. I mean, I think sky's the limit for them now that they have a true wide receiver 2 in that offense. All you really need now is a quarterback to lead that team into the playoffs and hopefully to the Super Bowl.
Agreed.
Stephon Diggs, he is visiting the Patriots. So I did have him as a landing spot for the Patriots. Didn't expect it to be one of the last options for the Patriots to look at for wide receivers. But again, they have not had the chance to really get any good wide receivers. So adding Stephon Diggs is still a good option, I still believe. Again, he's got a lot of drama, but I mean, I think he can still help that offense.
I still think he's got all the talent in the world, to be honest with you. We saw what happened when Nico Collins went down. Stephon Diggs was able to produce a ton. He looked like his old self in Buffalo. So I still think he's got gas left in the tank, and I would love the signing for the Patriots.
I would like to see it too. I mean, I know we're going to go for a wide receiver in the draft, but hey, it's just what it is. Gary, you got any more news and notes?
Not that I can think of.
All right, then let's go into our NFL free agency winners based on the teams and see how well they did. Gary, I'll start with you. Which team do you think did the best in free agency this year?
So I kept it simple and just went with the Commanders. I mean, they made a couple of key signings, but obviously the biggest move they made did not come from signing somebody. They traded for Deebo Samuel. I think that that is a huge keystone to that offense
Hmm.
because you talked about how already fast they are and how young and motivated that offense is. Now you add Debo Samuel, who his whole career has been a top of the league dual threat um, wide back
Yeah.
position player. I think that the sky's the limit for this offense. We just saw them play at their peak, and now they're getting even better. I can't wait to watch them play.
Yeah, I also really love the shout on them being the winners because they had a lot of cap. They need to spend the cap, but not only did they spend the cap, they were also in the trade market and found some
Mm.
trade key pieces to trade for, like Debo Samuel, like you said. So I think Commanders is definitely one of the top teams that definitely is one of the greatest winners in this year's draft,
Mhm.
especially because they were just one game shy of making it to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, and they went out and got Laramie Tunsil too, which I totally forgot about until now. But that's a huge get from Houston.
It is huge. It is huge because they needed to help that line. They need to make sure that they can protect not only Jaden Daniels but also Brian Robinson, Austin Eckler, who are in the backfield.
Yeah.
I'll go with my team, and it may seem very biasy, but I just don't see it too biasy. It's the Patriots. I just think that the amount of money that they had, obviously we saw this maybe 4 or 5 years ago when Mac Jones was in the offense. They went out, they signed a bunch of players with the cap that they had, but it wasn't too many big signings that year. This one seems a little different. They went out and actually signed big signings for like a very more defensively. Offensively, they really wanted to go sign those big name wide receivers. They were looking at Chris Godwin, trading for DK Metcalf. They just couldn't just get enough to get them to come to New England. But Vrabel definitely looks like he can be the guy to change his team around. And obviously, I just enjoy that they actually put in the effort to sign a wide receiver. They didn't get it, but obviously now we know that they're going to go find one in not not free agency, but now in the draft.
Yeah, I actually really like what the Patriots are doing. I love the signing of Milton Williams. I thought he was going to be a Panther, but you guys threw him an absolute bag, and understandably so because he's so good and also so young. So I would absolutely love it if I was a Patriots fan. Then you go and sign Carlton Davis, Morgan Moses, who I think is a great guy to get because I think that they need to solidify that offensive line wall. And I think Morgan Moses, a
Mm-hmm.
huge, big body offensive tackle. I think that's a great start. And I think they're also going to attack that in the draft. I think the Patriots are doing a great job here with a new face in New England. And I wouldn't be surprised if they finish with a 9-8 record this year.
Hey, that's what I like to hear. Is it enough though to make it to the playoffs, Gary?
I mean, who knows? But listen, this is the thing, right? I know Patriots fans, if they don't make the Super Bowl, they're not happy. Listen, you guys have a second-year rookie quarterback and are a very, very young team. Going 9-8 from going what 4 or 5 and 13 and
Yeah.
12, whatever you guys went respectively, is so much better. It's you have to take baby steps. I know you guys aren't used to that. But when you're rebuilding, you have to take baby steps in going from the fourth overall pick in the NFL draft. Probably should have had the first, but going from the fourth overall pick in the NFL draft to a positive season, borderline playoffs, is a great improvement.
Yeah, I think that's a big step, and that's also what I would agree with you on. I obviously want to see them go to the playoffs, but are the expectations there to go to the playoffs with this team? You could say yes with the defense, but offensively, it doesn't look like it's a playoff running team.
Right, exactly, and that's the biggest thing, right? It's do you exceed expectations? That's what I define as a winning season. Not necessarily, like I said, you guys are so used to winning. It's if you don't win, it doesn't mean it's just a failure of a season by any
Yeah.
means. As long as you're
No,
exceeding expectations, I think you're doing the right thing.
last year, the failure of the season was not losing the last game.
Yeah, right. No, you're right.
Isn't that wild? Should have had the number one overall pick, but here we are with number four. Those are our team free agency winners. Patriots for me, Commanders for Gary. let's go into the free agency team losers, teams who didn't perform to what they could have and what they should have. Gary, um, I'll start with your team because both of our teams are actually in the same division. But I want to talk about your team first because your team is very intriguing.
So ugh, I went with the 49ers, and I think the biggest thing with me is all the 49ers fans got tricked into thinking that they were going to sign Nick Bosa, or I'm sorry, Joey
Mm-hmm.
Bosa.
Mm-hmm.
Before hours later, he ended up in Buffalo. I saw a tweet. I saw numerous tweets saying that he was finalizing a deal with San Fran. And hours later, I randomly got a tweet saying that he was signing with the Bills. So they lost out on him. They also lost out on key defensive guys like Hufanga. They lost out on Aaron Banks, who was one of the best guards in the league, in my opinion. He went to Green Bay. And then obviously they lost one of their most versatile threats on offense in Deebo Samuel. So I don't know many pluses uh, on this San Francisco 49ers team. I believe they also lost Javon Hargrave, who's a big run stopper in the D
Yep.
line. There are numerous more guys that honestly I'm completely blanking on, but um, I mean, like I said, I really don't see any positives this offseason so far for the Niners, especially considering the fact that I think they're actively trying to trade Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, I mean the fact that they're also trying to ship away Brandon Ayuk. We saw this team just 2 seasons ago going to the Super Bowl, not winning it,
Right.
but just going it. Then you have a losing season, and you would think that maybe they would just try to add key pieces to try and help that offense, but and defense. But that didn't just end up happening. They lost a bunch of people, and now they're just kind of just trading everything away. It just looks like their Super Bowl hopes are faded away within the last year and a half.
Yeah.
I'll go with my team, and I think my team is also another one that just kind of did what the 49ers did, but trade away their key assets. And that's the Seahawks. The Seahawks traded a lot of their offense. They lost key pieces in defense, but they didn't have the greatest defense anyways. But they released Tyler Lockett. They traded away DK Metcalf. They traded away Geno Smith. They overspent on Sam Darnold, 3 years, $100.5 million. I mean, he's making over $33 million a year. That's just not. I just think that's an overspend when you had someone who's similar to Sam Darnold, just older, and Geno Smith. If Darnold is your future, then I see where you're going with this. But if you're seeing him as a bridge, that's not a bridge quarterback. That is a player that you're hoping and you're banking on. And if this doesn't bank, the Seahawks will be looking at free agency quarterbacks next season or draft next season, maybe the year after as well.
Yeah, I can't express enough how much I like the Seahawks being here because they are confusing the hell out of me. I don't know if
Mm.
they are embracing the tank or not, and clearly they're not because I'll tell you what, you don't just dump $100.5 million into a bridge quarterback. That just doesn't happen. So unless this is the first time in history, the Seahawks clearly see Darnold as a guy that can lead their team, whether they think they can win this year or not, which I think is absurd if they think that they can win this year, especially after releasing Tyler Lockett, especially after trading DK Metcalf. So I don't know what the front office is thinking in Seattle, but at the same time, I've thought that a lot about Seattle at times, and they've somehow mystically been able to have great seasons, just like the last 2 seasons. I mean, we all thought coming into this year, at least, that they were going to be absolutely horrible, maybe 5 or 6 wins, and they almost made the playoffs. So who knows? I don't know if they're able to do that again, but I guess we'll have to watch because I think Darnold and JSN can be a good duo, especially now that they got Cooper Cup. I mean, that could be a good trio actually, but we'll just have to see.
It really looks like that the best team in that division is just the Rams, and then there's a tier gap, Cardinals, and then there's a major tier gap with the Seahawks 49ers.
Yeah, I probably agree with you. I think the Cardinals and Seahawks definitely are closer, but I would agree in the sense that that's the order.
It's just It's crazy to see because that division actually seemed on paper to be really good last year.
That division was like the best, has been like up there for top three divisions in
Yeah,
football the past like decade. So
and it just did not meet expectations. But
yeah, exactly,
how it works.
exactly.
Let's go into some of our free agency quarterback winners now, and I'll start with my guy, and this is Mr. Joe Shiesty, Joe Burrow. Now, obviously, he's always a fantasy winner, and he always is a top quarterback in the fantasy world. But again, T. Higgins has been a part of that offense all the time, and I think if they couldn't get T. Higgins back, who was Joe Burrow's wide receiver two? I mean, we saw him thrive with Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd left, and T. Higgins was there. But if T. Higgins went, where did you see Joe Burrow, and where could you see him falling in fantasy drafts? And he would probably still be up there. But could Burrow do good without Higgins? It was the bigger question. Now we don't have to have that question because Chase and Higgins both getting long-term deals for 4 years, and that's huge. I think Joe Burrow's stock continues to rise, and I think his ceiling will always be at the top and should probably be quarterback one right now.
I couldn't agree with you more. He was going to be my quarterback until I saw you snag him up. Yeah, I mean, I absolutely love this for Joe Burrow. I love that the Bengals are actually doing what they're supposed to. Of course, they got some question marks still on the defensive end, but this is obviously at the top of the pecking order for them to get stuff done, and they did it. So I'm happy for Joe Burrow. As long as he can stay healthy, the Bengals will forever be um, a team to beat. So that's good for them.
Yeah, very good. And I want to hear about your guy because we've been talking about that division for the last, what, 10 minutes almost?
Hmm.
Talk to me about why you think this quarterback should be a fantasy quarterback winner, free agency fantasy quarterback winner.
Yeah, so I went with Matthew Stafford, and it's just strictly because I think they upgraded a ton at wide receiver.
Mm.
I don't think Cooper Cup's a wide receiver one anymore. I truly don't. And I still think that Devontae Adams is. We saw him in New York. Of course, he had some bad moments, but he had some great moments as well. I mean, we saw what happened when him and Rodgers are clicking on all cylinders. I believe in his last game or one of the last games of the years against the Jaguars, he went for like 200 yards and two touchdowns or something like that. So he still obviously has a ton of the tank. Him and Nakua, I think, are up there with the Bengals for the top duo in the league. I would not put them above them, but they're up there in terms of best duos in the league. Um, and Matthew Stafford has a cannon of an arm, and we have seen what happens when Devontae Adams plays with a quarterback with a cannon of an arm. He's literally had one his entire career wherever he's gone. So that I just can't wait to see that. And like I said, I think that they improve at the wide receiver position with the departure of Cooper Cup and the presence of Devontae Adams.
Yeah, and if Devontae Adams doesn't take a step back due to his age, then I think this could be a really good signing for the Rams. And you get rid of Cooper Cup, yeah, but Matthew Stafford being there is a huge one. Staying there in that offense. Now Devontae Adams going there, he gets a little uptick because Matthew Stafford can't rush out of the pocket. Obviously, fantasy quarterbacks, we want to see them scrambling out of the pocket. This helps Matthew Stafford because he gets in a way, better pass catcher. And again, that offense is pretty good, pretty dang good. So I like it. I think if it wasn't Joe Burrow, I'd probably say Matthew Stafford being probably my number two or three.
Mm.
Let's go into our fantasy quarterback losers now. And I'll start with my guy, and my guy is Sam Darnold. Now, in a way, Sam Darnold's a winner, and that's because he got paid. For himself, he's the winner for getting paid. But for fantasy-wise, Sam Darnold's a loser because he doesn't have the offense that he had last year to succeed. He did really good. I mean, at one point, he was in the MVP running race in the beginning of the season. He played very good when he was in Minnesota. Can he change? Can he do what he did in Minnesota and do it in Seattle? I just don't think so. Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson to JSN, and who else? I mean, it really just, I don't know. I just don't see Sam Darnold succeeding. I think he was put in a worser position, and he might get overdrafted a little bit still in fantasy. And I don't see him being a top 12 quarterback right now.
I can see it. Yeah, obviously his what he's had with his team has changed a ton. Obviously, that Vikings offense is up there for the best offense in the league, and I would agree that the Seahawks is not. However, he does have some weapons on that team, but they're not Justin Jefferson, Addison, and Hawkinson. So we'll see what he does when his cavalry takes a step back. Uh, Also, we have to see if he's actually the guy when it comes to playoffs, if they're able to make the playoffs, because clearly he wasn't this past year, and maybe he isn't going forward. I don't know, but that'll definitely be something that we have to keep an eye on because they, like I said, dumped a ton of money into Sam Darnold.
Yeah, and now that they have so much money invested in him, can they still go spend money?
Yeah, probably. I mean, I don't know the exact specifics on how much money he's owed each year, but the cap has just gone up, and I continue to see quarterbacks changing, restructuring their deals, and I wouldn't be surprised if this is a scenario where the same thing happens.
Yeah, I'm curious. I'll be curious to see if they draft someone.
Mm.
Who is your fantasy quarterback loser?
Yeah, so I'm just gonna stick with the losing trend, and I'm gonna say Brock Purdy. The biggest thing, of course, is that he lost Debo Samuel, and
Mm-hmm.
now he might lose his only other true wide receiver, one in Brandon Ayuk via trade. I'm gonna keep it short and simple. Um, if you watch football, then you understand why he is here. Uh, he's possibly going to lose the top two targets in that offense, I guess, outside of George Kittle. But without those two, does he look like a $60 million worthy quarterback? I doubt it.
No, and he still I still agree with you. I still don't think he's worth that much. But
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the loss of Debo, and then you mentioned the possible trade of Braden Ayuk. Who really is that offense? The only thing really in that offense is Christian McCaffrey. It's the only
Mm-hmm.
person that's there, and it could be the reason why they went to the Super Bowl 2 years ago was because Christian McCaffrey. But obviously, Brock Purdy played pretty good, and they said Brock Purdy's a successor. Can he really truly be a successor this season with the team that he has? I just don't see that happening. Is he
I agree.
still? Is he still a? Would you consider him a top 15 quarterback? How's that?
Purdy,
Yeah.
without those pieces or still with those pieces? Well,
With what?
obviously Debo's out right now, but with Ayuk still, yeah. I honestly would have him probably in the back end of that top 15 no matter what. But I think it's crazy to say, do we have him as a top 15 quarterback, and then is he worth $60 million a year?
Those are two. Yeah, two very big different things.
Yeah, right.
Cooper Daly taking Jawan Jennings. He's tough.
I mean, maybe.
Maybe. I mean, it depends. I mean, can Jawan Jennings step up, fill the role? I just don't see that happening with Debo and how good Debo was. So
Yeah.
let's go into our running backs and our free agency fantasy running back winners. And this one was a funny one because we have both players that played together, and they are no longer playing together. I'll start. Actually, I'll have you start with your guy because your guy was really the number one guy in that offense last year.
So I went with Najee Harris, and I absolutely love the thought of having him in the Chargers backfield all to himself. I've always been a fan of his, as much as I hate the Steelers, but I think that we've wanted him to be this top fantasy running back for some time now. I think he can finally be that. I think he is not going to be Austin Eckler, but he can
Mhm.
play the exact same way. Justin Herbert loves dumping it off to his running backs, and Najee Harris has a great pass catching ability. We saw it when Big Ben was there, and they played together for a short time. But granted, we saw it, and I think he can do the exact same thing. Not to mention, the Chargers signed two offensive linemen in this free agency, including the big unit of Mekhi Becton, former Eagle and Super Bowl champion last year. I think that he has taken tremendous steps forward since he was drafted to New York. And I think that this Chargers offense, or at least this offensive line in the run game. I think they can mesh so well. I think the sky's the limit for Najee Harris.
And I'll go with my guy as well to compare it with Jalen Warren because I love Najee Harris's landing spot with the Chargers. I think that's huge. Again, he's RB1 there, and he was pretty much RB1 back and forth a couple weeks in the Steelers, but now Jalen Warren is the official RB1. He's got no real big competition. Kenneth Gainwell, okay, what competition is there really with him? He's more of just a backup. Do they go draft a running back in day 2? Maybe, but I see them drafting a running back somewhere in the draft. Will be day 2, maybe a round 3 pick. But again, Jalen Warren is the RB1 there. Now that DK Metcalf's also there makes me question a little bit whether or not Jalen Warren can still be productive in that offense. But I think defenses are going to now see the pass-heavy offense, and they're going to kind of step back. The linebackers are going to step back. And I think that'll give more space, more room for Jalen Warren to succeed and burst into the open space. And I think that's where I'm giving the Jalen Warren upside, and that's why I think he is a free agent winner for the running backs in fantasy.
I agree with you, and especially if they aren't able to land Aaron Rodgers, that helps me even more because we just saw Rodgers loves to dump it down to Brees Hall, and he's also always used that pass catcher running back in Aaron Jones as well when he was in Green Bay. So I think the exact same thing can happen here, and I also think the sky's the limit for Jalen Warren, a guy that I've also been a fan of for a while.
Who do you think? Who do you think will have a better 2025 fantasy finish between these two running backs?
I'm gonna go right now with Najee, but I think it's very, very close, especially if the Steelers are to land Rodgers. I think it is very, very close. The only thing with the Steelers is that they lost offensive line pieces instead of gaining. They lost Dan
Hmm.
Moore, who's a big, big piece. Um, but I know their rookie, uh, I forgot who they drafted, the kid from Washington, but he's Fatanen. I'm pretty sure that's who they drafted.
Hmm.
He was hurt after, or in like the second game of the year, maybe. So I'm sure they're going to get him back. Um, but yeah, that Steelers offense will obviously be one of the biggest things to watch this season because they always have the defensive pieces. It's been the offense that's been the problem.
Yeah, and I'd also slightly agree with you with Najee Harris being the better back in fantasy this year. But again, don't be surprised with Jalen Warren also producing very well as well.
Right.
Jalen Warren, Najee Harris, our fantasy running back winners of free agency. Let's go into our fantasy running back losers of free agency. And I'll start with my guy because my guy used to be a part of the Chargers, and then he found a home last year with the Commanders. And he didn't really lead up to expectations what we saw when he was on the Chargers. That's Austin Eckler. And unfortunately, I have to say he is going to be a loser this year, fantasy running back loser, because of the fact that Deebo Samuel is he's a spree threat. He's a great option for dump off screen opportunities for Jaden Daniels, and he can carry the ball as well. And that just makes Eckler's job to be relevant in fantasy so much harder. And last season was the first time in his career that he didn't have a receiving touchdown at all. So I think Eckler's opportunities are going to be very, very limited now. I wouldn't even be surprised if maybe they cut him. I don't know. I can't remember what his money is, but I wouldn't be surprised if they cut him.
I'm okay with this because obviously, I mean, his job is pretty much diminished now with Debo Samuel
Mm-hmm.
there because everything that Eckler does, Debo can do it and probably better at this point in Eckler's career. I still think that Eckler has gas in the tank and wherever he's gonna end up, I think he can produce. But I agree with you, and I also wouldn't be surprised, honestly, if Washington takes a running back in the draft because Eckler is getting a lot older. And I
Mm-hmm.
think they do like the thought of that 1-2 running back punch that they've had for a while now. So, yeah, I can agree with this.
Yeah. Who is your running back loser? Because I'm intrigued that you put him as your running back loser for free agency.
So I put Chuba Hubbard, and pretty much the only reason is because they signed Rico Dowdle, who I didn't know ran out for over 1,000 yards in Dallas. He kind of swept under the radar, but he did. He ran for over 1,000 yards in Dallas, and I just can't see a world in which that helps him, to be honest with you. I mean, of course, we see these two roll backfields. Both guys are able to produce, but we've never seen a world in which it makes the other guy that might have had a backfield to himself prior do better. I mean, it only takes carries away from him. Of course, we see places like Detroit where both of them are able to just go off. But I don't think that Rico Dowdle and Chuba Hubbard are Gibbs and Montgomery. And also, we haven't seen Gibbs or Montgomery have a backfield in Dallas to themselves, except for when one or the other goes down due to injury. And they play much better when they have the backfield to themselves. So I don't see a world in which this helps them. Unfortunate, because I know a lot of people that are high on Chuba Hubbard. I think he was the top 5 running back finish or close to that this year. So yeah.
And do you think it's Chuba Hubbard's offense, or do you think it's Rico Dowdle's offense?
I think it's still Chuba Hubbard's, but like I said, they're obviously going to split or 60-40, whatever. But you're obviously going to have a decline when you're not 100% getting the carries. So, unfortunate.
Yeah, it is unfortunate, and I think I can agree with you. It is Chuba Hubbard's offense, but now with Rico with the 1,000 surpassing season, I don't know if the Panthers really see Rico as the main guy or just kind of a solid backup. I think it does hurt Chuba Hubbard fantasy value a little bit, but definitely also Rico Dowdle obviously was a great running back last year in fantasy. I think he's a bigger free agency running back loser because he went to an offense that already had a running back who was producing.
Okay. I mean, the only reason why I wouldn't put him over Chuba Hubbard is because Chuba Hubbard had a much better season
Yeah,
than Rico
exactly.
Dowdle. So I think Rico Dowdle was hurting Chuba Hubbard instead of Chuba Hubbard hurting Rico Dowdle.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Austin Eckler, Chuba Hubbard, our fantasy running back free agency losers. Let's go into our free agency fantasy wide receiver winners. And Gary, I'll start with you.
Yeah, so my fantasy wide receiver winner was, in my opinion, the best wide receiver in the NFL this year, Jamar Chase. Um, I mean, of course, outside of that, I think the reason why he's here for me is, I mean, he just got an absolutely insane amount of money, but I can only imagine how good he's going to play now that he got that money. Granted, one may think that he had something to prove last year and now he doesn't. I still think that he does because he just got paid. I don't know if it was more than Garrett, but I think it was for the highest
Yeah.
non-quarterback player in the league. So obviously he does have something to prove still, in my opinion. And now that offense seems so much more comfortable with everybody getting paid like T. Higgins. Of course, T. Higgins being there, could it hinder Jamar Chase's capability? Obviously, because I think T. Higgins is the best wide receiver in football. However, they play so well together that one could also argue that T. Higgins is able to bring out the best in Jamar Chase. I think we're going to see that for time to come. I think this Bengals offense, or at least this Bengals trio in Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, and T. Higgins, will be the top of the pedestal for the passing game in the NFL for many, many seasons.
Yeah, and I can't go against you on this. I think they are one of the best trios in the NFL right now, and like you said, maybe with the next 5 years to come as well. And I just think Jamar Chase, you could say, yeah, T. Higgins could hurt his value and all, but still, he's been playing with T. Higgins this whole time, and he's still always finishing as a top wide receiver one. And I just don't see him going any farther down than that, really. His ceiling's always going
Yeah,
to be wide receiver one. And his floor, what? Finishing as a
wide
wide receiver
receiver 8.
10?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Still a top 10 wide receiver. So I don't see him losing any value with that offense, and I'm all in on Jamar Chase. My guy is a guy that started, what, March 1st as the wide receiver 3 on the team. And 2 weeks later, he was wide receiver one, and that's Jackson Smith-Njigba. I mean, the guy went from 3 to 1 real quick, and it's crazy to see because he also has so much potential. We've seen him have so much potential. We saw a lot of great flashes last year with him having a little breakout season. And I think not only that, he can take a step forward into this season. Now the only issue is that I have with it is, will Sam Darnold be able to issue him all the possibilities and of endless opportunities to be that wide receiver one on that offense? And can we see Jackson Smith really truly be a top 10 wide receiver? And I think we can, really.
Yeah, I hope and pray it ends up like that. I'll be honest, I don't see it just due to the fact that I think him and Cup play the same. I think they're both slot receivers, and do I think it's going to work? Honestly, not really. But I would love if it did because I want Jackson from Jigba to be the best wide receiver in the NFL. I want him to be up there in terms of bona fide wide receiver ones. I think he obviously has the capability. I've seen it with my two eyes. Um, but it's definitely a question mark for me that I will be paying attention to this year. Obviously, I think they get an upgrade in Sam Darnold at quarterback. Not an insane upgrade, but definitely I do think it's an upgrade. And he's got the wide receiver one position now. Of course, Cooper Cup's there, but I don't think he's a true wide receiver one anymore. Do I think Jackson Smith-Njigba is a true wide receiver one? At the moment, no, but he 100% can be. So we'll have to just see. And I'm in love with his potential. So hopefully he's able to live up to it.
Yeah, I think Cooper Cup will still take a lot of pressure off the top defensive backs, but I still think even with Jackson Najigba, JSN having a cornerback one from the other team, I think JSN still is a beast, and I think he still has great potential.
Mm-hmm.
JSN and Jamar Chase are wide receiver free agency winners. Let's go into our wide receiver free agency losers. And I'll start with my guy, and this was an unfortunate one for Jalen McMillan. He was a true wide receiver two last year with Chris Godwin going out. He still was relevant sometimes as a wide receiver three with Godwin being there. But then Godwin got injured, and then McMillan had to step up, and he stepped up very good. I was really surprised that they weren't going to either try and trade him if they sign Godwin or just do something with him to make him more relevant. But in the end, Godwin stayed there, and that's why I think he's just a free agency fantasy loser because he has great fantasy potential. He's just in an offense that has way too many mouths to feed, especially with Kate Otten at the tight end position too. Bucky Irving, Rashad White. I mean, there's too much mouths to feed. And unfortunately, Jalen McMillan is my free agency fantasy wide receiver loser.
Yeah, I can completely understand it. I mean, we saw how good this offense was when Godwin was healthy, and it didn't really include Jalen McMillan that much. So unfortunate for all the Jalen McMillan fans out there. But I also agree with the thing that you put at the bottom of this. I think that Jalen McMillan is one of the best handcuffs in the league when it comes to guys that he can come in for and produce due to injury. If Godwin is unfortunately going to go down with injury again this year, I think Jalen McMillan can come out and be a stud that we saw this year. And I think that he's still going to have games this year where he goes for 100 yards and a touchdown. But it's not going to happen as much as we may think, obviously, now that he's going to be the wide receiver three.
Yeah, and I think in fantasy drafts I'll still try and target him. Hopefully you don't target him in drafts, so we have the same. But yeah, late in the draft he's an easy steal, especially if Godwin doesn't come back to being that true wide receiver alpha that we saw
Right.
him be.
Agree.
Who is your loser for the wide receivers of free agency?
So I can just pick one. It's between DK Metcalf and George Pickens, which two people or people may be surprised at for me to have both of these guys here. But I'll explain. I'll keep it short and simple. I think they're going to cancel each other out. I truly don't think this offense is going to work out with two divas on it. I think at the moment it's too many mouths to feed, but it's also just the fact that um, both of these guys are going to demand the ball be in their hands, and it's just impossible to do that every game. So I think this offense at some point is going to blow up, and it may happen sooner than we think. But I truly just don't think both guys are going to be happy here, and I would love to see it blow up.
Yeah, I mean I would like to see I mean, I'd like to see DK Metcalf succeed. George Pickens, it's whatever. But the fact that DK Metcalf and George Pickens, two that have a lot of drama all the time on the
Mhm.
field, is the big one. And I think they will be losers because they're what I believe, two wide receiver ones. And can you have true two wide receiver ones? Will one complain that they're not getting the ball one game or something like that? I think there's a lot of potentials that could lead into bigger problems for the two.
Mhm.
Hopefully, fantasy value, they still both succeed and be really good, but unfortunately, we just might not see that.
Yeah.
DK Metcalf and George Pickens and Jalen McMillan, our fantasy wide receiver losers. Let's go into the tight ends. And I'll start with my guy. And the winner for the tight ends is Evan Ingram. Now, Evan Ingram, he played very good. He played very good when he was in a great offense in the Jacksonville Jaguars offense. When he was healthy, Travis Lawrence just loved throwing to him. But now being on the Broncos, I think this is even better for him because he goes to a team that only really has Cortland Sutton. Could they draft a wide receiver? Sure, they could. But the fact that Evan Ingram was on the Giants and was absolutely horrendous, and then all of a sudden went to the Jaguars and was tremendous. I just love the Broncos landing spot for him. Probably wouldn't have said that in a lot of different offenses if he landed there, but the fact that he went to the Broncos, I think, is one of the best opportunities for Evan Ingram to still succeed and be a top 3, top 5 tight end in fantasy.
So I'm unfortunately going to disagree, I think.
Ooh.
Yeah, maybe the first disagreement that we have. I love Evan Ingram a lot, but Trevor Lawrence peppered him with targets. Like, he was his favorite
Yeah.
target. There were games where he had 10 plus targets, a lot of them. And I just don't know if that's going to happen in this Broncos offense. I think I said it once before. I still think Evan Ingram is going to easily finish as a top 10 tight end in the league. Do I think he's going to finish as a top 3 like he was 2 years ago? I doubt it. I really don't think so. And even top 5 might be a stretch. I think he might finish just outside the top 5, tight end 6 or 7 range. I think it's just because that Broncos offense is too unpredictable for me at the moment, at least in Jacksonville. As much as I don't like Trevor Lawrence, as much as I don't like a Jacksonville offense, like I said, Trevor Lawrence loved throwing to Evan Ingram, and we kind of knew we were going to get every game with Trevor Lawrence throwing to Evan Ingram. At the moment, I can't say I know what I'm going to get with Bo Nix throwing the ball to Evan Ingram and the unpredictability of the Broncos offense, unfortunately. However, I do love the upside. Like I said, I'm a fan of Evan Ingram. So can he finish as a top 3 tight end? 100%. I just don't see it happening. I really don't.
Okay. I mean, I could agree with you if you asked me this 5 years ago when he was part of the Giants and he went to Jacksonville. I'm all in on Evan Ingram. I was in on him last year again. Didn't end up happening to where I wanted him to finish, but I still think he has the true potential with the Broncos.
Okay.
But I'm curious to see your take on these
Yeah.
notes here with the tight end winners of free agency.
So I wrote exactly this. Whoever plays tight end for the Giants. And whether that is Theo Johnson, the past rookie this year out of Penn State, Daniel Bellinger, or somebody else that they attack maybe through the draft or whoever they take in free agency. I don't know. Whoever it is, I think is going to have a surprisingly good season for the Giants because if Jameis Winston is a quarterback, I think that opens up so many doors for that tight end position because he loves throwing to tight ends, loves throwing to David Njoku the past year. And even back in his days at Tampa Bay, he peppered OJ Howard with targets. I can 100% see the same thing happening here. We see this a lot where a guy comes into maybe kind of an unpredictable offense, and the first step into productivity is finding the safety blanket tight end. And I feel like the Giants have kind of had a tight end problem for a while now, but I think this is the play caller that can maybe bring the pass catching tight end back in play for the New York Football Giants.
Yeah, and Theo Johnson actually didn't do that bad. He had 330 receiving yards, or 331 to be exact, but he still wasn't bad. He was a good tight end who was just starting as a rookie, and I think there is potential there. And like you mentioned, with James Winston being the quarterback at the moment. We could see a different one. I still think there's going to be something there. They signed Darius Slayton. He's not really much relevancy besides Malik Neighbors. And I think they need to find who that true second receiving threat is. Is it Theo Johnson? Is it a tight end that they get? Is it Darius Slayton? No, hopefully not. But I think I could definitely see one of the tight ends for the Giants really being a true possible breakout. And I think whoever it may be could be a great free agency fantasy tight end winner.
Yeah, you mentioned that he finished with 331 receiving yards last year, which obviously isn't a ton, but he also missed 5 games. So who knows? Maybe he gets closer to 600 with those 5 games played. Um, I don't know, but I truly think that if he is the guy to take the step up in that tight end position, I think that Jameis Winston can bring the best out of him.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Evan Ingram and Theo Johnson, or whoever the Giants tight end is the free agency fantasy tight end winners of free agency. Let's go into the last one, free agency tight end losers. And Gary, we'll start with you first.
I don't want to do this because I absolutely love TJ Hawkinson, but I think that he is my fantasy tight end loser. Not the biggest Sam Darnold guy. Neither of us are. But I think that he is better for TJ Hawkinson's stock because I'm just going to go off what I saw from JJ McCarthy at Michigan. Obviously, an unbelievably run-heavy offense. Of course, they had one of the best running backs in the nation at the time in Blake Corum. I still think that they have a great running back and are able to go run heavy, and I honestly think that's what's going to happen. I think JJ McCarthy is actually going to be solid, as much as I hate to admit that.
I
But
love to hear
it's
that.
not necessarily because he's going to have a ton of opportunities to, throw 4 touchdowns and 400 yards in games. No, I think he's just going to be solid in the opportunities that he gets. I can see him throwing for 170 yards a game, but still being good because he has the capability to escape the pocket and flow an offense together. So I can see that offense being really good, but honestly, I don't know if TJ Hawkinson is going to be a factor at all in that offense. Maybe not at all because he's still a top touchdown. He's still a top tight end in my opinion. But I can't see him having the same impact that he has had the past 2 seasons in Minnesota.
Yeah, which is unfortunate to see because Hawkinson being a first round pick in the draft seasons ago, he's just got so much potential, and I love all the potential he has, and just will he be able to find the offense that's right for him? And I just don't see Minnesota Vikings being the offense that's truly right for him. I think he can find a better offense and really succeed in a different offense. And sometimes players just go into a team that just isn't a great fit for them. And we could very much see that this year with JJ McCarthy being the guy throwing it to TJ Hawkinson. Hopefully not, because JJ McCarthy is amazing, but we'll argue that a different day. But
Right.
no, I do think Jay Hawkinson's very great of a tight end. It's just he's just on this offense that could just hurt him for fantasy stock.
For sure.
I'll end it with Pat Frymuth as my tight end loser for free agency. And the reason for that is because you mentioned DK and George Pickens being the losers. Now that DK is officially a part of that offense, there's just going to be too many mouths to feed. He was up and down last year in the tight ends for fantasy. And I think there could be opportunity where he can still get decent production, but now it's kind of pushed down with DK Metcalf there. And he's just going down the pecking order on who the targets are going to go to. And we could see Pat Frymuth have a couple great weeks, but again, he was just kind of mediocre last year. And I think if DK Metcalf wasn't on that offense and we got maybe a better quarterback or whatnot, then maybe I could see a little rise in Frymuth. Unfortunately, it goes the complete opposite way. It takes a turn for the worse, and Pat Frymuth is on my fantasy tight end losers for free agency.
I agree with you. I've never really been a fan of Pat Fryermuth, but you hit the nail on the head. There's way too many mouths to feed now with DK there. Of course, Najee Harris. Jalen Warren always has the pass catching ability, so I think they're gonna execute that very well. I agree with you. I think Pat Fryermuth is just going on down the pecking order. I don't think he's really going to be that fantasy relevant he might end up in that 12 to 15 range.
Yeah, which sucks. Not good for a tight end. Maybe for quarterback, pretty good.
Yeah.
Not for tight end. But that's going to do it for this week's show. Free agency winners and losers, not by only team, but of course by fantasy. Of course, if you haven't done so already, go use that code SportsTimeHQ on Underdog Fantasy. They're going to match first deposit up to $1,000. So might as well just go use that code. We got fantasy baseball season around the corner. It's officially started. I couldn't get Shohei Ohtani, unfortunately, on my fantasy teams, but that's okay. That's okay. But again, go use that code SportsTimeHQ on Underdog Fantasy. They're going to match your first deposit up to $1,000. If you're still looking to purchase a trophy, ring, or belt, go to TrophySmack.com/SportsTimeHQ. Go purchase that trophy, or that ring, or that belt, or whatever you'd like to purchase on TrophySmack.com/SportsTimeHQ. Got a great loads of things to shop for on there. Again, I'm joined by my great co-host Gary. Go follow him all over social media at GDPicks. Again, I'm Fernando. I'm your host of Sports Time HQ, and we'll see you all on Wednesday at 6 p.m. as our shows always on Wednesdays at 6 p.m. and also on Sundays at 12 p.m.